have to tell you, I've had a lot of people come to me that are on multiple peptides, saying, hey, I just stacked these 8 peptides and I'm doing these mega doses of them. Come in with the idea, I'm gonna take a peptide to help my health. I'm gonna try and build my longevity quotient. I'm gonna create my performance health. I'm gonna reverse my aging. And I'm not here to be the regulator. I like people to be able to have access to things that help them live a healthy life. But because you don't know how they're working, if they don't know what the correct doses are, they could actually end up harming themselves. You have a certain amount of research that has to be done to validate that the finished product is safe. So at the end, you have a safe product that is safe for humans to inject in their body. There is so much information coming out on peptides, and it's also creating a tremendous amount of confusion. So there's everything from what's the legal status, what's a research-based peptide versus for human use peptide, how's it being regulated? All of these things, they can overwhelm you and be confusing. The first step I would say that you should understand about peptides is one, that they're incredibly powerful, and that, in my opinion, you should really use those under supervision. You should have a healthcare professional that's guiding you on how to use peptides, not somebody that is, in social media saying, hey, I just stacked these 8 peptides and I'm doing these mega doses of them and they look fantastic. More than likely, they're doing more than peptides. They'll look the way they look. That's a whole other topic. But let's start with for human use peptides. There are FDA-approved drugs that are peptides. Insulin is a good example. Valesi, PT141 for women is a good example of a peptide that's approved for human use. Sermorelin, a growth hormone secretagogue. So there are peptides that are approved as drugs. Then there are peptides that are allowed, they're on a category list that allows them to be compounded. So they're not approved drugs, but because of physician demand and the law and the pharmacy's ability to make them, you can have a peptide available for human use, and maybe it's formulated in a way that's unique. Here's what's important to understand. When you're a compounding pharmacy, you have a certain amount of research that has to be done to validate that you made that peptide, one, and that the finished product is safe, that you're using the proper filters, that you're getting rid of any contaminants, anything that was in the intermediate steps of the processing of the peptide. So at the end, you have a safe product that is safe for humans to inject in their body. And many of these are injectables. That's where it's interesting. The big, kind of argument is, well, is there any immunogenicity? Meaning that when you inject a peptide, is your immune system going to have a problem with it? And probably the ones where you see that are the growth hormone secretagogues. Like, you do have to instruct people, hey, if you notice you're getting a rash or you're getting a hive, you should stop taking that, because the next time you inject it, it could mean that you have an anaphylactic reaction. And that's why that oversight is so important, because in general, peptides, don't create dramatic side effects, but still need to do them under supervision so that you understand there's a goal for using them. Now, when you go into research peptides, so, the FDA, about a year and a half ago, and look, I went and testified, in front of the FDA for the PCAT committee, so the Pharmacy Compounding Committee, regarding these peptides. And they decided that about 15 peptides were considered not safe for human use and therefore put on category 2. Well, that sprung up the industry of research peptides, which I think is interesting because, first of all, if it's research peptides, how's a consumer buying them? Or they're doing research on themselves? Are they a research lab? I mean, what's research only mean? And then not for human or animal use. That would be I think for me, would be a lead into, well, why would I want to do that? But the bottom line is that there's a real structure to, how we're allowed to do things. And especially as it relates to injectable drugs. I mean, injectable drugs are considered dangerous drugs. Even if you have B12, you take a pill, it's a dietary supplement. You inject B12, it's a dangerous drug. Once you inject something, it's in a different category of FDA. I'm for consumer freedom. I think consumers should have the right to be able to, utilize things that help their health. I think peptides, where I found it to be, I guess a little bit frustrating, was the fact that I know we collected over 1 million prescriptions from 9 different pharmacies. And what does that mean? That means that physicians wrote a prescription for their patient and that they saw value in that, and then wrote for refills on that peptide. And so when those peptides were taken away, people that were getting results, people that depended on those peptides, were no longer able to get them. Here's the issue on research peptides. You don't know where they're being made for sure. A certificate of assay doesn't guarantee that, what you're buying is actually what's in that bottle. There's all kinds of ways that certificate of assays can be manipulated. And the other piece is that they didn't necessarily do that $100,000 worth of preclinical work that has to be documented to show that they're making it correctly. That's what happens when you're in a compounded pharmacy. You have to show every step of the way that you're making it correctly, and here are the steps that you're doing to assure that, so that the finished product is safe. When you have research peptides, and granted, there may be research peptide companies out there that are making a good product. I would say that there was actually some interesting evaluation of that occurred and got published, and there are some that are out there. But once again, because they're deemed research only, people are buying them without any supervision. Dosing could be all over the place, especially on the GLP-1 front. People that are using research peptides, if they're not looking at their blood work, if they don't know what the correct doses are, they could actually end up harming themselves. You could come in with the idea, I'm going to take a peptide to help my health. I'm going to try and build my longevity quotient. I'm going to create my performance health. I'm going to reverse my aging. But because you don't know how they're working, and what most people don't think about on peptides is what's the upstream effect and the downstream effect. What's trying to be accomplished when you're utilizing that peptide? Because remember, it's a signal that your body's taking in, and it's changing how your body does things. From my perspective, and chairing the International Peptide Society, here's what I'm for. I'm for the FDA allowing for more peptides to be utilized by compounding pharmacies as long as they're deemed safe and there's adequate research that follows compounding. Healthcare providers that have a prescription pad should be able to write for them under supervision. And I don't know how this happens because, it gets tough when you start looking at legal status of these things. And I think there's some oral peptides that should be more widely available for people that they could use. Things like BPC 157, which of course, once you inject it into a joint or soft tissue because you want to repair, you're injecting. It's a dangerous drug. But a lot of people have benefited from the use of an oral BPC 157 for just general aches and pains, repair, helps with gut health. And I'm not here to be the regulator. I like people to be able to have access to things that help them live a healthy life. I think peptides hold tremendous promise. I think, we're at this threshold now where enough people are talking about it. And unfortunately, enough people that really have had no training in pharmacology or understanding receptors or understanding when you make one thing happen in the body, once again, body's being a system of systems, I'm going to influence my chemistry by taking this peptide. Well, what's that mean upstream? What's that mean downstream? Is it really going to help me to improve, or am I getting myself into trouble? And I have to tell you, I've had a lot of people come to me that are on multiple peptides, like 6, 8, injecting 7 at a time, using high doses. I saw an 18-year-old, male doing large doses of retatrutide, which first of all, you can't get for human use. Secondly, had no business taking that amount. And he was doing it just to show that, oh, I can take this much. Well, what's that going to do to his future insulin regulation and glucose regulation by doing that? Most important thing to remember is safety first, under supervision, and have someone help you plan a peptide program that makes sense for your chemistry and what your goals are. And then, look, huge fan of peptides. Obviously, I wouldn't chair the International Peptide Society or have written 2 books on peptides or 100 monographs if I didn't believe they're the future of healthcare. And that future started 100 years ago.